Welcome to a moment of intriguing introspection beyond the realms of fear, hesitancy, and doubt. A deep dive into the questions of the ages shared with the courage that may challenge perception, yet teases open the expansive depth of conscious awareness. This is a rare and unique moment in our collective history. And beyond all sense of dogma, I am Master Lady Kira Ra, promising to call forward the essence of all that you are. Join me as I offer the latest self-ascension revelations with supportive wisdom. And why not remember that peace, love, and joy are your birthright? So this is the moment to bring your hand to your heart and to give yourself the gift of relaxing into a deep breath with a wondrous exhale. I look forward to joining you right now in another episode of Expanding Consciousness. Namaste, everyone, and welcome to Expanding Consciousness, the podcast that's right here, right now, documenting our rising experience as a collective conscious awareness. Hey, I'm Master Lady Kira Ra, and I'm really glad that you chose to join me right now, or that you found this podcast for the first time or the infinite time. It matters not. You are as I am, and welcome. I want you to just bring a hand to your heart and invite yourself into the knowing, into the being that is animating this body. I know that might seem like a deep dive just to get started, but tonight, this is all about what happens when we really free our mind. Beyond a temporary moment or a moment where you might have a wonderful medicinal experience or any other type of mind-freeing experience. There are so many, right? But when we are able to really go beyond the mind, when we are able to really free our mind, then we are able to enter into those 5 steps. Because remember, eternal life is always in the series of the 5s. But when we free our mind, we free ourselves into that deeper gaze. We free ourselves into the smile of the transcendent nature of the all. We really embody the energy of have mercy on yourself. The recognition that every being is doing the best that they can, given their level of consciousness at the time. Something my beloved wisdom teacher Sri Ram Dass said often. And I'm sure those of you that remember him in form remember hearing him say that. I hear it all the time. You are doing the best that you can. And that's why your conscious awareness keeps awakening, keeps rising, keeps bringing you into all of these new experiences. We are collectively always moving through awareness, experience, choice, awareness, experience, choice, awareness, experience, and choice. And when we free our mind, when we can lift above and see that and have the recognition of it in a way that illuminates us, that is when we are able to take the deep dive. That is when the energy of those 5 steps comes forward, the ones that activate the remembrance, that activate the limitless nature, that really assist us to lift those veils. Because remember, your veil is your level of consciousness. You want to lift your veil, lift your level of consciousness. You want to have more veils, drop your level of consciousness. It's your choice. The ever-refining spiral isn't stopping. Where you are in it, that's for you, especially when you become consciously aware. So let's take a moment and back up and say, okay, so how do I get to these 5 steps? What are these 5 steps? Well, the first thing is to remember that through that sacred sequence of incarnation, and go back and listen to the podcast on the sacred sequence of incarnation if you're not sure what that is. But very briefly, it's why you're here right now. It answers all those questions. It's one of the most greatest healing forces on the planet if you give yourself the gift of really relaxing, freeing your mind, and just seeing the big aha. That transcendent knowing that can never be taken away because you have personally arrived there. You see it, you experience it, you live it. I am as you are. Breathing that in. And as you're bringing that in, as you're breathing that in right now, let's begin with the 5 medicines, because the first medicine is this physical body. It's the reason we took form. It's the reason we're here. And when we take form in our physical body, when we come into this body of form and say, yes, we are at that 12 o'clock, humanity's 12 o'clock hour, where it all begins and where it all ends is how we navigate a physical form, how we bring conscious awareness into a physical form. Really breathe that in. Conscious awareness into physical form, into this physical form, this body. And then that's the 12 o'clock. So we arrive into that. And then there's all the mythology. There's everything that's ever been written about the fall. Well, the fall is that now we are in physical form. Our consciousness, pure awareness, the totality of all that I am, the warehouse, the eternal library, falls into an emotional body. So consider that that's 3 o'clock. So as you would fall, as consciousness falls into an emotional body, then it's help me, help me, help me. So it doesn't know what to do. So it falls again until it meets the mind, the mental body that rises as the champion, that rises as the one that wants to take over, that says, I've got this, in this 6 o'clock position, which is directly opposite the physical body, which is why the physical body and the mind will always be at war with each other. And then there comes a moment where this physical, emotional, mental becomes so repetitive, so overwhelming, so intense, that from deep within rises this understanding that beyond the idea of just a me, there is a we. And the eyes open, and we lift up into that 9 o'clock position, which is a spiritual experience, an opportunity to begin to see things in a different way. But when that really lifts us, that's that lift, it's that propellant, but that's the secret. It's having that lift to reunify with the physical body so that consciousness itself, the center of the wheel, 12, 3, 6, 9, but right in the center is consciousness itself. That still center where this is no longer a spiral that's spiraling around you. This is no longer a dance where the physical and the mental are at war with each other, or the spiritual and the emotional are constantly trying to soothe each other and have dominion over each other or allow manipulation. It's when you're standing in the middle, ready to dive into the essence of all that you are, in the presence of, I am ready. I am taking this seriously. And that's really the challenge. Because the challenge is to honestly be the peace, the love, and the joy that walks through this illusion. Because everything that we are co-creating is it's ours. And so because it is ours, when we stand forward again, when we are able to invite ourselves to be in the gift of the self-inquiry, at the depth of the going beyond what me invited this to be, into these 5 incredible questions that we're going to go through right now, then it is then that we are released. We are released from the grip of the ego, because it's in its last dance of power. It's in its last moment, because the ego is the resident of the mind. It only exists in this potentiality. It only exists where we carry this form of body. Because in this conscious creation of potentiality through informed awareness, the human experience requires this form of a fall. Why? To discover the inner surrender, to remember it, to come forward into authentic communion. And really feel your heart, feel your heart right now. Because when we are in the egoic entrapment, and it really is a self-imposed entrapment, when we're in that, and it's very much a self-fulfilling experience, right? So while we are in this egoic entrapment, so to speak, what happens is that we have this spiritualized ego and spiritualized arrogance. So that 9 o'clock spiritual keeps swinging all the way back down through the mental, back up to the emotional, swinging all the way back down. And you're in like this eternal loop that's just swinging and swinging and swinging. And so this is important to remember because you're going to move through this energy, all do. We move through this energy flirting with this fall, flirting with this egoic presence. And then we have always this, I'm going to use the word final fall. And in that final fall, it always ignites rebirth and your ultimate freedom from all illusion. And I want you to notice how you feel as I'm even sharing that with you. You know, maybe even just bring your hands to your heart and really feel that. Because these energies, all of the energies that we work with here in this field of creation, all of them, they're smart, sly, frequently misunderstood. So it leads often to the self-inquiry of, well, then how do I know? Like, how do I know it's real? How do I know it's not? How do I know it's my spiritualized ego or spiritualized arrogance? How do I know when that's in control? How do I know when it's me? That's the reason that we have the 5, I'm going to call them symptoms, steps, whatever you want to call them. So let's go into these. Let's really look at this. So as we do, if it's safe to do so, bring your hands to your heart. If it's not, just bring your conscious awareness to your heart. And we're going to breathe in a deep Ave Sa breath, meaning that we breathe in the energy of the essence of the Ave, the hail, that beautiful hello to the universe. We do that as we breathe in through our nose. And then we're going to exhale the essence of the Sa, the infinite, so that we are relaxed and receptive. And so inviting in the Ave, ah, and relaxing that out with a smile. Celebrate you are here, that your freedom is right now. So as you are in this moment of freedom, as you are in this moment of expansive awareness, as you have invited yourself to know that the brain is able to expand, that you are able to be in that transcendent knowing of the living essence of forgive them, they know not what they do. It begins with self, does it not? So the first energy is the refusing to acknowledge projected emotional energy. And I want you to really breathe that in. It's that refusal or that refusing an active energy to acknowledge projected emotional energy, which is a denial. It's the denial of personal emotional wounding. And this is very, very common. And it's really the first barrier, because when we can get beyond that denial, remember that denial will always express as these gravitations toward lofty ideals or organizing a focus on sources that are outside of self. It's always outwardly projected. It's very much still in the victim consciousness of we've got to do X because they're doing Y, right? It's that it's just that way it works. And so this expresses in the sense of like a greater good. For example, one religion feeling superior to another. There's this righteousness, this greater good energy. And so denial sustains the energy of polarization and density consciousness. So remember, we're all born into density consciousness. That's why we're here. We're here to transcend that, to grow through the pyramid of spiritual awakening. So during that moment, as we're moving through the paradigms, as we're moving through everything that's here, that's when that denial of the personal emotional wounding becomes vast, because we find our partners in pain. And if you don't know what that is, go read Sacred Union, The Journey Home, the first book Sri and I ever wrote that has been in constant print now for 22 years. Learn about partners in pain, because that's where that denial gets anchored. Because in this field of density, if you can't break through number one, then the aspects of coming into your eternal nature, of really embodying your self-ascended presence, become more challenging. So it brings us to number 2, which is very, very similar. And what that is a denial of personal responsibility. And I want you to really breathe that in, right? The denial of personal responsibility. Because this is when reality, or it's important to remember that reality, as we embrace it, as we experience it, it's a perception. It's just a perception. Reality is a perception that has been co-created through a collective agreement with the consciousness, right? A collective agreement with the consciousness that's guiding your actions. So consider that. It's a collective agreement, because when your needs are not met, whatever those needs might be. An empowered response, and I'm using the word in, right? So an in, when your needs are not met, and you, how would you know that? If you're consciously aware that your needs are not met, which is a mastery act in and of itself. So when your needs are not met, the empowered response is to really gaze inward. The what in me invited this to be, to really recognize how unmet emotional needs, see number one, right? Unmet emotional needs drive our perceptions and our judgments. Really breathe that in. So, in the grip of a spiritualized ego, which is when a lot of people get stuck in that 9 o'clock position, because remember, the mind is still controlling that. You have to swing it back up rather than let it keep swinging back the other way. So, when you're in the grip of spiritualized ego or this arrogance, the cause of your pain will always be outside. It'll always be from some other source. There will always be a blame energy attached to it because it's regurgitating out of victim consciousness, which is based upon a belief in a planetary thought body that has its foundation in fear. Thereby, self-sabotage is constantly happening. So this is important because it really is a moment to break out of a self-defeating cycle of victim consciousness when you can let go of the denial of personal responsibility. That's the gift, is that for as much as we want to deny or blame others, it wasn't me, I didn't know, whatever the excuses are, the minute you stop making excuses is the minute you're free, because you get the smile of getting it. That there's never going to be, your excuses will never end if you stay in the cycle of excuse, because you're stuck in number two. It's the denial of personal responsibility, which has nothing to do with blame or having done anything wrong. It's the acknowledgement of you're ready to move forward. You're ready to take your consciousness into a space that it has never been before. And that's when number three becomes really important, because number three is, it's really, and you're seeing this very, very rampantly around this planet right now. It's like a need. It's an absolute, almost a hunger to manipulate opinion or distort facts. Now, really take that in. It's a willingness, and it's more than a willingness. It's an eagerness to share incomplete or completely out of context information to support a personal agenda. And behind it is this sense of needing to always feel right and to seek out allies by focusing others to base their attentions on the soundbite versus the gift of the depth of introspection, the moment of quietude. And this is the fusion. This is really a fusion. It's a fusion of energy of spiritual activism harmonized with arrogance and a sense of righteousness that opposes the energy that would actually sustain peaceful resolution. It becomes an addiction. And this is the big trap. Many can't get beyond this one. And this is why, if you really want to stand in your freedom, if you really want to free your mind, if you really want to live that life of empowered instantaneous manifestation, then you're thrilled to arrive here and to see it for what it is. To go, wow, amazing, to break through that sense of righteousness. And that's what brings us to number four, which is a preoccupation with right and wrong. Remember that the ego loves to blame. It's its favorite thing to do because it's a sly pirate. Archangel Zadkiel 101, right? The ego is a sly pirate. So everything it does subtly. And it does it by directing your attention into principles, back into the mind, right, wrong, justify, all of these. Whereas divine mastery presence, your eternal nature, in all ways avoids judgment. Because it is judgment, and especially the judgment of the self, that stops us from rising in our conscious awareness. It's our limitation. Judgment is the limitation. And so it's important to remember that the spiritualized ego will always and in all ways feel this need to control and to justify through an apparent alignment with a higher principle. It'll have this wrapped around it. Remember, there's no immunity to this. Everyone walks through this. But what's important is to invite yourself to find that space to relax and remember the self beyond the perception of polarity. Ooh, you tracking with me? All right, because that brings us to number 5. And number 5 is grandiosity and pontification. Preaching, just preaching, offering unsolicited advice, calling for attention from others, this sense of carrying a final word on matters or relying on a higher authority and then denying the validity of any other perspective. It's very, very exclusionary. And there are all types, and I mean all types of spiritualized ego arrogance. There's just so much. So through that experience, grandiosity is essentially a natural expression of that, right? And it often resides in a 6th and 7th chakra of the body and prevents us from activating the higher ascended chakras, the 12-pointed ascended chakra of the divine galactic blueprint. So it often comes with a sense of only my inspiration is inspired, only my stuff is accurate. It reinforces that energy of spiritualized specialness. Because remember that the spiritualized ego, especially when it is fueled by arrogance, has to claim, it has to be special, it has to feel special, and it claims unique skills at all times. So reluctance to the knowing that sincere, just really feel that energy of sincerity, right? Sincere spiritual surrender results in extraordinary inspiration and mystical communion. And how the divine, how that inspiration is lived, understood, and communicated is the focus of interference. So when that sly pirate of the ego comes in, that's what it's trying to go after. Because the ego has to believe that it must control. It must control. It's stuck in the mind. It's that number 6 position right between that emotional and the spiritual, and it just wants it all. It's this hungry, hungry, hungry hippo, right? It's just like, I want it all. It must control. And through that, it actually provides a sense of safety. And so it usurps your authentic soul-based expression in favor of unfinished emotional healing. See number 1 again. Remember that the universal journey of wholeness begins when we resolve the energies of separation and fear. Separation and fear. Really breathe that in, because to embrace a solely consciousness-led life, to really say yes to your divine mastery presence, to call in that, can often begin in what feels like a wrestling match, right? How many of you have been down this path? It's like, okay, I'm doing this, but then there's like this wrestling match with the ego, and then there's the justifications, and those medicines start spiraling. Remember, that's the call to the middle. That's the call to the consciousness. That's to be right there, to say yes to you, to remember that anything, and I mean all sense of fear or doubt or hesitancy, is really just a self-sabotage molecule that's inviting you to understand those 5 medicines from the center, to come right into the center, to command it through that inspiration, through that freedom, through saying yes, to invite yourself to be unified beyond all sense or perception of separation. To know I am as you are, to free the mind to consider a greater potentiality, a greater life, and to know that whatever dream you have ever had, you have already accomplished, or it wouldn't be in front of you. Maybe it's time to walk through and say yes and let them be again. I love you. I am honored to be with you. And all of the mystical experiences are opening. I invite you to visit ShriAnKira.com right now. Register for the Weaving of the Quantum Alchemies in July. Be there and learn how you can sustain the greater frequency of open conscious awareness and weave it into an incredible, beautiful, successful experience of life right now. Visit ShriAnKira.com. If you're grabbing this live or in its first week, be there on the 30th of June. And if it's after that, go back and watch over at YouTube. Official Shri and Kira, a lot of predictions coming forward. July 2024, triple meteors, peak experiences, and humanity begins again. I love you with all my heart. Many blessings and namaste. Thank you for joining me on Expanding Consciousness. Learn more about the Yoga of Self-Ascension at shriandkira.com, and make sure you're subscribed to YouTube official Shri and Kira. Remember, you are the gift. I love you and look forward to being with you again. Namaste.